week we open wide the virtual stage where ideas spark and wisdom fills the page. From the UK to the land of maple trees, John and Mike bring clarity with ease. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine, your message taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine, your message taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we grow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show.
Hello everybody, welcome to another Lord Zoom Live. And this week we are talking about town halls. What do I mean by town halls? That's probably the biggest question. I will try not to take the full hour to explain it. But for me, a town hall is a public meeting, which may be a town hall for a city. It may be a town hall for a business. It may be a town hall for a group or association. But to my mind, the idea of a town hall is to allow the people in charge to speak to their congregation, their employees, their followers, their customers, but it should be a conversation rather than just a presentation. That's how I think a town hall is. If you disagree, if you've got some other views, put it in the chat. I would love to hear how people interpret this town hall. I attend town halls for corporates. I attend town halls for Zoom. I attend town halls for products that I have subscribed to and use. There are many different types of town halls, but the ones that work the best will probably follow the rules which we're going to go through. Because I've taken the best ideas, I put them into our friend AI, and this is what they came up with as a summary. So let's describe it as a managed conversation between the leadership, speakers, employees. The whole idea is to inform, to educate, to reassure people maybe in some cases, because rather than just talking at them, you're going to have a conversation with them, and it gives you an opportunity for people to respond. Now, we're not going to go down the marketing rabbit hole of who you should allow to speak and what you should allow them to say and how you're going to deal with difficult questions. That will be another whole series of things which are outside of my control. So, who knows what a town hall is? No, that's not the right question to ask, but it is a great way of starting any town hall. Open it with a poll. Why? Well, firstly, it shows that you've prepared something and you've not just thrown it together at the last minute. So it shows organization. Secondly, it gives you a slightly devious way of directing where the conversation could go, because what you put in your poll is probably going to lead where the conversation goes. Also, it's really useful because it gives you an idea of how active your audience are. You may have 15 people, you may have 1,500 people, but see how many of them answer the poll question, and you get an idea of who is just watching and who is prepared to be engaged. It's also a way for you to find out if there are difficult questions by asking a poll and getting the answers in. You may get an idea on the difficult questions that are lurking there, and the ones that you wish to address, put them in the poll. You can see if people really want to know the answers. And it's a great way to open up. You can in Zoom and other places. If you, I really don't use external questionnaire systems unless you really have to, because you're inviting people to engage outside of Zoom. Try and use the Zoom platform. And you can always ask open questions. You can always ask multi-choice questions, and you can always ask for multi-choice answers. So you can give them 5 subjects and allow them to choose multiple things that they are interested in. Don't limit people. Encourage them, but don't limit them to the point where you're forcing them to make a decision of talking about one thing or another. That's the way you should start it, with a question. But I should have done this first. But if I did it first, you would have lost the impact of the question. So I'm actually going to step backwards now and ask you a silly question. Do you think you should have a meeting or a webinar? A meeting is much more personal because people can put on their cameras. But does that make any difference to the content of your discussion? On a webinar, you can still turn on somebody's microphone so they can speak. You can invite them to the stage so they can be seen and speak. You're not really limiting people on a webinar, but a webinar has much more control, and you can almost do it in a meeting, but it takes more preparation, it takes more control, it takes more concentration, it takes more setting up in the first place, but you can run it in a meeting. And I'm not going to give you an answer. Personally, I like using webinars because I know where people are. And I can more or less give them every feature that they have in a meeting if they really want to. Although I would do 2 things in a meeting. I would turn on the ability for you to control their microphones in the meeting settings before I start the meeting. And I would not allow them to turn on the microphones. Frankly, I wouldn't allow them to turn on their cameras either. And I certainly wouldn't allow conversation except to the panelists and public. I wouldn't accept private conversations because otherwise people can start having discussions about what you're talking about without you being aware of it. And if you're not aware of it, how can you join in? So make sure all discussion is public. That might mean that your polls, you don't allow anonymous. Personally, I would, because people then feel that they can be honest if they don't think they're being watched. So in a meeting, attendees are visible. They can speak when they want to speak. They can raise their hands. You've got that group dynamic. If you want that group dynamic in the ability to view them all sitting at home talking to you or having their dinner while they're asking the questions, then that's up to you. It depends what atmosphere. Personally, I prefer the webinar. If you want to have a conversation between themselves, build some breakout room session or something. It does feel a bit more personal, but a Zoom webinar with lots of seen to be done interaction is okay. On a Zoom webinar, they're only going to see the speakers. They're only going to see the people you select. The audience is going to feel that they're watching. But if you've got Q&A, you've got questions, you've got a chat that's running, even get some people to put some questions in the chat to prime it, then you will get more interaction. If you want to turn on the cameras, you want to turn the microphones, you can do that. So you might want a meeting when you have more control and more understanding of your audience. You might want a webinar when you think there's a potential of a few hostile people in the audience. Because let's be honest, a couple of hostile people in an audience can change the dynamic unless you're controlling them well. One of the biggest mistakes of any town hall is to think that one technical person is going to be able to run it for you, and the speaker can just get on and have a conversation with the audience, and that's all there is. And take it from a guy called Mike Latter, who is trying to control this meeting for you, that he can't even keep control of just this. And I say just this because we're going out to 5 different social media platforms, and he's got the conversation in the room, and he's just raised an eyebrow to me. So he probably hasn't realized how many social medias we are going to at the moment. The host needs to present, but the host cannot present, watch the chat, manage the Q&A, launch polls, control speakers, troubleshoot sound, manage the recording, watch the clock. I think that's most of the things you need to do when you're hosting it. And of course, managing socials, yeah, which we just talked about. There's just no way. In fact, it's really difficult for one person to do all those other jobs. And if you have got an expert, somebody who's really good at managing these things, that's fantastic. But do you want them answering the Q&A? Don't you want a member of staff who is used to answering those questions to be managing the Q&A and to be managing the chat? I would suggest you do. You want somebody managing the technical stuff, but you want a second person at least managing the chat. And if there's a lot of chat, then maybe one person's not enough. Your mileage will vary, but it is so important if you're going to have an interactive session that people feel they can interact with you and get feedback. There's no good having 150 comments come in the chat and nobody taking any notice of them. What does that tell me? Tells me you're not interested in the chat, said he, checking the chat out the corner of his eye to make sure there's nothing coming through. So you need a team. If you're going to do this seriously and you want to be impressive, you need to do this seriously. Zoom themselves have quite a few office hours where product managers will come on and do office hours. But increasingly, I will see 3 or 4 Zoomies in the background, answering the Q&A, answering the chat, supporting the speaker. You will not be judged by just what you say in the town hall. You'll be judged by what you respond to in a town hall. Otherwise, and I think, Mike, we say this every time we do these sort of things, if you don't have interaction, you might as well just posted a video on some streaming platform or even just on YouTube. Because if you don't interact, then what's the point of doing it live? So before I bring Mike on, let's talk about the roles, and then we'll see if he's got any ideas I haven't thought of or organized here. So the first role is going to be your chairman, your leader, your whatever, your host, who can welcome the audience, explain what's going to happen, introduce the speakers. Yes, I suggest that there is a host separate to the speakers. Can control the conversation, can move between the sections, can introduce people. When they're not live to the speaker, they can be organizing what's happening in the background and working out what needs to be said next so the speaker can deal with their speaking. The next role could be the person that's controlling it, the Zoomie or the Zoom master or the producer who's going to start the session. Check that there's a recording running. Because I did a show last week and I didn't notice the recording wasn't running because I hadn't set the settings to automatically record. Control screen sharing. You don't want people turning on and off then controlling their screen sharing. So have somebody do it. If you're running webinars, then maybe Production Studio is a good way to do it. Have somebody there who is the producer who's going to do all the poll launching. You don't want the speaker to have to go down and work out to launch the polls. You want a Zoom master doing that for you. They can look after the audio and the video. They can make sure that the people can be heard. They can move people on and off stage. And basically, they're just going to deal with all the technical stuff. And then the other 2 roles are the moderator, which we've already talked about, who watches the Q&A and the chat. groups questions together to hand on to the speaker for answers if you want to answer live as well as answering in the Q&A, and generally manages the interaction between the speakers, the host, and the audience. And then, of course, the last role is going to be the speakers or panelists. And again, you may only have one speaker or panelist, you may have a multiple. Even for an office hours, it's really useful to have a panelist or a speaker coming in to talk about a specific issue, because that gives a focus for that particular event. Rather than just the boss telling everybody how wonderful things are, why not have one of their product managers or marketing managers come on and explain a specific topic to give the office hours more focus? And so those are the main roles that I believe that you need. You might want another technical person in the background if there's any problems, but usually the setup will determine whether you need a technical person on parts of the Zoom Master. So that means that poor Mike here has been running 3 roles today. So Mike, can I ask you, does that sound a good mix? And do we need to find 3 of your mates to help you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Hi, everybody. Sometimes it can get overwhelming. Again, right now I'm officially, as everybody knows on YouTube, I am officially watching the chat over there. And of course, I am officially watching it on multiple YouTube channels. So I'm watching the chat on multiple YouTube channels. I did not go to LinkedIn as of yet, John, but I did notice that you're having a bit of internet issues. So everything is still moving along quite well with you. But yes, I did notice that Zoom was a little upset with your connection so far. So if everybody did notice that John was freezing a little bit, that was an issue coming because from John's end. But yeah, as far as we've seen on YouTube, but everything is still good. And of course, Zoom resulted in going into strictly audio mode when John's video was starting to freeze there when he was having bandwidth issues, but he's back. So it was just an intermittent thing.
So as far as the role is concerned,
yep,
we've noticed even in Zoom presentations that they're putting more staff into their product meetings, aren't they? There's more staff answering questions and interacting.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's never a bad thing. What I did notice that needs to be improved, though, is that there are too much. Again, it's always good to be answering questions in chat, but again, that never makes it to the person that's actually the actual host actually answering the questions too. So you got to be careful with that. It's always good to get that on, because again, if that question got answered only in Q&A section of Zoom, it would not necessarily get into the meeting or into the webinar, or in our case,
recording.
it would never make it to air. Yeah. Or into the recording. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think when it comes to how long is a town hall going to be, I would try not to plan more than 2/3, or to be honest, for a lot of really interactive sessions, I wouldn't plan to provide content for more than half of the meeting, because if you don't leave room to interact with the Q&A, as you say, Mike, it becomes a private conversation between the person who asked the question. And we all know that it doesn't matter how mad your question is, there's going to be another dozen, 2 dozen, there could be 1,000 people out there who watching the recording would have had the same question.
Right, exactly. And on top of that too, I've been in many meetings where they all of a sudden spoke for, it was an hour webinar or an hour meeting, and they've spoke for 50 minutes and they're giving you only 10 minutes worth of questions. Well, and you take a look at how many questions came in, and they always go at the end, the infamous, oh, if we didn't answer your question, we'll get back to you via email and answer that question. And John's shaking his head. Why are you shaking your head, John? Answer why you're shaking your head.
That is a marketing disaster.
That's right.
Because quite frankly, they never do answer your messages. I've asked questions, seen that, and I've never had an email from anybody, even you guys at Zoom. I've never had a follow-up email where I had a question left over that didn't get answered. So that's bad to start with,
Yes. Yes.
let alone the fact that you've just given away a jewel. People, trying to think if this is true back in time. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that forever, people don't mind if stuff doesn't work. Even buying a brand new car or a brand new house or a brand new, all the tech that I buy. If it doesn't work exactly as expected, it's not the end of the world until I ask the question, why is it not working? And I get diddly squat back from the person who sold it to me, or the manufacturer, or their website, or their office hours Q&A. People will accept things to go, you know what? When I used to build websites for people, I used to purposefully make them break, not disastrously, just a little bit not work properly. Because I found that if there was a little problem and I fixed it really quickly, the customers thought I was God. So I got into the dirty habit of always making sure that something didn't work perfectly the first time so I could fix it and impress them. I promise you, I've got over that now. Honestly, I have got over that now. But it does make a really obvious statement.
New. Nasty, but cute. Very cute and nasty all at the same time. Go for it, John.
Yeah. The only trick I do nowadays is I'll freeze in the middle of a statement just to see if Mike thinks we've lost connection.
Right. So if it's audio and video that freezes, I know better that Johnny's playing games, because Zoom, as we saw earlier, the audio kept going. Continue.
Yeah, I've got this dodgy HDMI cable, which I need to fix, but it's a micro HDMI. So I'm really just praying that it's going to work. Don't really want to replace the whole camera. Yes, I need to go in their office hours and get it fixed. So let's have a look then at an example of the things and the steps you need to go through a meeting. And let's start with arriving. Before the program begins, open the session. Don't let people turn up 1 minute past when it's supposed to start and the presenter is starting to present and not everybody's got in the room. Open it up early. Open it up 5 to 10 minutes early. And then people have a chance to settle down. You can have some background music. You can build an atmosphere. The host of the meeting can come on and say hello to everybody and give them an idea of what's going on, prepare them for what's going to happen, give them countdown music, maybe put an open question in to get the interaction started. Where you're from is not an impressive question. Unless you're trying to prove that you've got a worldwide audience, another type of question may be better. Not too inflammatory, shall we say, but you just want to get the people going. If you've got a software product, ask them which platform they use it on. Ask them when they last used your product. Ask them something that shows that they're, they got a chance to share something without it being too controversial, shall we say? And open the Q&A straight away before the meeting. So if you've got some really hot topic questions, you can get them before you even start. And just leave up a message, welcome, we're beginning shortly. Give them a countdown timer. People love countdown timers. Of course, you then have to keep to your countdown timer or they get very annoyed. So make sure that you're confident your countdown timer will be honored. When the meeting officially starts, whether you want to do this before the official start or on the official start, make sure you explain why you're doing this town hall, what it's going to cover, how long it's going to last. If it's going to last a certain time, then you're going to do Q&A, maybe give those 2 times. How people can participate, how questions are going to be selected, whether or not it's recorded, whether or not the recording is going to be used by you to get better answers for them, or whether it's going to be recorded publicly. What's going to happen to the unanswered questions, as Mike beautifully highlighted. Because people are more comfortable taking part in these sort of things when they've got an idea what the rules are. And also, they'll get better participation if they know what are the rules. And then each leader or speaker needs to cover 4 things. What's happened? Why are they here to talk about it? Why does it matter, both to the audience and to the organization? What there's going to happen next to fix it? And what do we need to know from the audience to make sure that what we are going to works? Ask people what they want. Because quite often, if somebody's had an issue or a problem, and it might just be a usability issue, not a technical issue, they've probably got some good ideas and advice on how you can make it better. So that's valuable, such valuable advice. Get it. And don't just ask people to put stuff in chat. Don't say, give a 1 if you're happy, give a 2 if you're not happy, give a 3 if you don't know what I'm talking about. Don't keep it to a same consistent type of prompt, because people get bored. Mix up your participation. So run some polls. Get the reactions emojis floating up the screen. They're always cool. Prompt them to put some things in chat. Have the Q&A working. Invite contributions from people. If you've got somebody who you know will provide a good contribution, maybe you've spoken to them before and you know who they are, maybe you turn on their microphone, but make sure they know before they open their mouth how long they have. It's much easier if you tell people before they chat that they've got a certain limited amount of time. It's easier then to I won't say cut them off, but I will, to cut them off or to limit their conversation or end their conversation early if you've given an idea how long they have to contribute. And you can always apologize to people and say, you've only got 30 seconds to answer your question, because otherwise we'll run out of time for everybody else. And avoid leaving all the questions to the last 5 minutes when, of course, we know it never happens, because you run 5 minutes over and then you never answer any questions. And suddenly your office hours becomes a failure. Because if you don't have a beginning and a middle and an end, you don't have any content at all. And at the end, you need commitments. And maybe even each speaker should have a commitment. If they can finish their subject in their allotted time, then they can have, as a speaker, their own commitment. What decisions have been made? Yeah, you're all looking at me be funny. That you can't make a decision unless you've had some interaction. So that's put you in a corner straight away, hasn't it? What actions are you going to agree to do? Who are the owners of that? Are you going to publicly say who's going to look after something? That's a really committed scenario. And I can feel a lot of you squirming now. You don't have to go to this level. But I'll tell you what, it makes a big difference to your audience when you do. What about the recording? Are you going to publish the recording, or are you going to be sulky and not give it to anybody? And where are those unanswered questions going to be addressed? We've already said we don't even see people answering directly to the people who asked them, but they should be addressed, and they should be addressed publicly, because this is what drives value. A conversational company makes so much progress. I believe that one of the successful features of Zoom itself is the fact that the product managers are brave enough, or maybe Eric just forces them. We'll keep that question to the side. I'm pretty sure they're encouraged. But I can tell you one thing, once you get them on a stage and they interact with their audience, and their audience doesn't eat them alive, but helps them with their projects, Zoomies love it. And if Zoomies love it running in Zoom, doing this whole process of office hours type meetings, I think that's pretty much a model for us all, that we can all do office hours meetings. And there are companies who do regular office hours meetings that I have been part of. And once they've built up an interactive group of people who are always giving them feedback, you can see they enjoy the whole process because they're getting free advice, free help, and free feedback from real customers who are really invested in their product and want the products to succeed. And that has to be worth millions to your bottom line, because it's the only way you can really get people committed, and publicly. So it doesn't just work for the people you interact with. It makes value to the business for all those people that can see what you're doing. So a typical town hall agenda may be welcome expectations, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes. Maybe a leadership update or a product update, say, 10 minutes. And then have another session of maybe the same sort of, same sort of 10, 12 minutes to announce something specific for the product. Maybe it's a feature or a feature request that's been implemented or something along those lines. Then run yourself an audience poll, get some feedback on what else you want to do, and then have 20 minutes for questions. Mike and I were talking about this, I think, before the meeting. How much time, and I think we talked about it during this thing, how much time should you give for speeches and for content? Well, in the model that I put together, I'm saying moderated questions should be 20 minutes. So that's as long as the 2 main speeches put together. And then maybe 5 to 7 minutes for what your commitments, what your next steps will be. You officially say what your roadmap is. Oh, this is, again, it's so valuable. There are people that run office hours where they just take all the future suggestions that people have had and they do an interactive conversation with the audience, and they will then come back and say, okay, they might have somebody there from engineering who's going to make comments, and they will say, all right, well, we're going to commit to doing this, this, and this. Engineering, does that sound reasonable? If it sounds reasonable to engineering, then they make the commitment that that's what they will work forward to do, and they will report at the next office hours on whether they get it. And then leave some time at the end for closing. Don't just say, thanks, bye. Have a closing speech, have a closing summary, have a closing message. And thank the people for their participation, especially including your audience. And let them know what's going to happen next. And so that is my outline. Do we have any questions? Do we have any comments? Mike, is there anything interesting happening anywhere? I can't see any, either gobsmacked or they're too scared to ask questions today. It's very quiet today.
They're very quiet. Yes, we are getting some laughs. They're laughing at us, which is
well, that's
very
good.
normal.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
They're,
okay,
but very quiet. Good or bad?
Oh,
I don't know.
okay. Well, there's a couple of good questions I've just noticed, and guess what? I've got
Right.
some content to answer that.
Excellent.
So let's talk about the chat, the Q&A, and how you work with your panelists, because I've got some questions around that.
Okay.
So your chat is really good for open-ended stuff, because people feel that they can just waffle on as long as they like in chat. Although there are some Q&A questions you can ask where you can give them an open field to type in, but people usually find that open questions in the chat is quite good. Also, you can get a lot of chat conversation and comments that will spiral. One person will say something and then other people will refer to that, and they will then take part and extend that conversation. So it can become a whole thread in itself. That's quite good. Conversation and comments are useful for that. But don't forget that you've also got things like, well, it depends on what Zoom you're running at the time, but you've also got the ability to put links in so that if people want information or access to information, you may want to share that information as you go through the presentation. Higher versions of Zoom webinars, you can put the links in the links tab. Otherwise, you might have to put it in the chat for meetings. Reactions are a good way of getting feedback. I'm just writing an app that counts reactions for people, because I've heard a lot of people commenting on it. So you can start it off and it will just, you can ask for reactions and it will count up all the people that react in the different ways and you get a score. So that's quite good. And Q&A is better for more formal questions where you want to have a formal conversation. Remember that in Q&A, you can vote up and vote down questions if you change the settings. So you can set it so everybody can see the Q&A questions, which may be a problem, but the advantage is people can vote up and vote down questions then, so that you can find the ones that are most popular. It's also useful that way, because then you don't get the same question asked by 17 people. You can get it asked by one person and hopefully everybody else will see it, and you'll get 16 additionals to that question rather than one having lots and lots of Q&As with the same answers. And this is where having different types of Zoom can make a difference, because if your speakers who are not speaking are in a webinar scenario and you've got backstage, they could be in backstage seeing the Q&A, seeing the chat, and they could be having a conversation which nobody else can hear about what they want to converse about, what they want to cover in their situation. Your management team, your admin team who are looking at all the questions could be in the backstage area having a conversation together and therefore moderating everything and working out everything together. The backstage is really useful for this part, and then you just leave the speaker on stage to deal with the speaking. Of course, you've got private questions between you, but it's much easier to have a conversation backstage between people than to have little messages sent onto the system via personal chat, which of course can always go wrong, because you can always hit the wrong message and do a public message to everybody. Mike and I are quite good at personal chats between ourselves, but there's been a few times when I've gone to hit the send key and I realized I've just typed it in public chat, and I probably didn't want to do it the other way. I've also done it the other way, where I've done something to Mike and then wondered why nobody commented, realized I'd sent a personal message to him instead of to everybody. So having the backstage is a really cool way of keeping the team together without being public, Mike, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The backstage functionality is really cool. Doing the chats, the private chat versus public chat. Yeah, that's definitely cool too. Absolutely. There's a lot of benefits to using the Zoom platform when it comes to the town halls, and it can be done in all kinds of different manners as well. And and again, we're getting a lot of good results. I'm looking at LinkedIn too. We're actually getting some happy comments coming there too, John. So yes, I was able to get in there too. And no official chat messages or questions as of yet from LinkedIn. But yeah, when it comes to chatting and such and taking questions, absolutely. The better you are interactively, especially in town hall type meetings, the better off you are. And again, John's right. You do not want to be, if it's a true town hall, you want the engagement, or it's not a town hall.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Let's have a little conversation about polling, because polling is a slightly different experience, and polling needs to be managed, because if it isn't managed, people don't take part. Ask the question, put it on a slide, then run the poll. When I've managed meetings for other people, I will quite often watch the poll answers coming in, and I will give a conversation about what the poll answers coming in is, especially if you're going to share the results at the end. Mike made a comment about the fact that it's obviously a tricky poll because the answers are coming in slowly, to encourage people that they're not late and they can still answer the poll now. There may be a particular answer that comes up really early, and then as the poll goes on, a different answer starts coming up as the most answered. And I might refer to that because it, again, giving feedback on the poll allows people to know that you're taking notice of it, and then share the results, or at least share the most commonly answered things. Make it interactive. Polls can be just as interactive as chat, and then give them to the speaker or the presenter to answer them. And it may be the master of ceremonies can give that sort of poll reaction. It may be the technical person. It depends on your team. But it's always useful for it not to be the speaker, because then you have a conversation between the speaker and the person monitoring the polls. And they are the representative, therefore, of the people who've made the polls. And reactions, same thing. Raise your hand if this is an issue for you. Give me a thumbs up if you think this works well. Ask for the reactions, then monitor reactions. And then, of course, you are going to do a thumbs up thing. Make sure you cancel all the thumbs up afterwards so that you know the thumbs up are for the section that the thumbs up are given for. And Mike doesn't know how to spell thumb, but never mind. Apart from that, we're doing fine today. Give people a chance to find the reactions buttons the first time, because not everybody knows where the reactions buttons are. Maybe you should give them some advice on how to get it. I've got on my little system a short video to remind people to do reactions, and quite often I'll give that before the meeting starts so people can practice doing reactions as well. But reactions are really cool. And the next thing, of course, is the what Zoom calls the pinning and spotlighting, what the rest of us call the organization of the speakers. You can lock down, to an extent, Zoom meetings so it always follows what you want it to be. So if you spotlight people, you can get the audience to follow the Zoom master, the host in Zoom host, so that they get to see who you want them to see, and you can pretty much stop them from going around, wandering around, looking at various people in a meeting. But again, it's much easier to control and manage and understand if you're doing it in a webinar. And if you're doing it in Production Studio, you can even have people with multiple slideshows, and you can just enable, disable slideshows as you need. So somebody like Mike can flip from the different scenes straight away. And like he's just zoomed me into a smaller box now, because that's just easier than spotlighting, unspotlighting, and whatever. But it still works. It can still be possible. If you've only got 2 or 3 speakers, it's not too difficult to spotlight and unspotlight people. And if you've got your hands on a Stream Deck, you can even pre-program it to spotlight or unspotlight the various people and set the scenes up. And if you can't, don't worry, because I've got an app on that at the moment. Yes, I've been doing a lot of app planning. So why would you spot shots or do that? Why would you not stop with one view? Well, because people get bored and the eyes get bored. And that's why I'm getting zoomed in and zoomed out by Mike on a regular appearance. I could look down here at my buttons, and if I get the right button, I could change view and I could say something else. And at least that would be some variation for you. Even news programs don't keep you standing watching the same person. They switch it around from one to the other, he said, hitting the wrong button and giving a blank screen. And not only that, but scaring Mike at the same time. So you could have a shared view of just the chair. You could have the chair and the speaker. You could have an interview layout with the panelists or a panel discussion. You could have a speaker with slides or slides on their own. You could have a Q&A panel, and maybe even have one of the people as just the screen that shows the questions or the Q&A or the feedback. So instead of having a camera on that particular box, that one is you have one which could be a slide share. You could have one that maybe is a results of speakers. You could have one results of speakers questions. Sorry, I didn't scroll up to read the whole note properly there. and you can mix it up that way. So there's a lot of really neat things. And when you close the meeting, you can have a closing slide so that the panelists may be not leaving the stage, hopefully, and just dealing with any outstanding questions, but the presentation's finished. So you have a closing slide. So let's just have a conversation about Backstage, because I did notice a comment about that as well. So Backstage is a really cool way to manage things from, as we've already said. But I've got a slide here about it, so I'm going to go through the contents of those ideas. Speakers can join Backstage. In fact, in webinar format, you can start Backstage and start the webinar before the webinar starts. So they can join Backstage and get to know what the situation is and get the system working and understand it all before you even start. They can test their sound and their video, not in front of the audience, which is really cool. They can watch the program on the preview button and turn up the volume. And they can see that from Backstage, but they cannot be heard when they have an argument about whether it's all going right or wrong. They can discuss it to their heart's content. Nobody else can hear them. They can prepare themselves. They can even have a practice with screen sharing if they're going to do that, to make sure that they know how it's going to work, although they have to screen share again when they go on stage. That's just the way the system works. They can receive instructions, ideas, advice, etc., and then they can move on the main stage when it's required, and they can come back when they've finished and carry on conversations. And this is why Production Studio really is something that if you go to webinar, it just takes you to another level of participation. Okay, if you've only got 10, 15, 25 people coming to your, 25, 30, once I get above 30 for a meeting as an office hours type town hall, then I'm starting to worry about the numbers to get a bit too big. So probably at that point, I would be suggesting that people are going to go to a webinar type format. Of course, if you're going to have 30 or 40 people there, only 5 of them are going to join the conversation, then you're not worried really. But once you get to a few dozen people starting to interact, I think Production Studio is more powerful and offers better control. You've got easier way to do slides and titles. You've got easier way to control who is seen, the host, the guests. You've got easier ways to make the layout look good, and very simply in the way, Mike just clicks one button and the two of us appear side by side. And it's a scene, so he can switch between scenes far more easily than he can by adding people and removing people from spotlights. It is just an easier way to work. Doesn't stop the Q&A, the slides, and there he is now. There he is. I even know which way to press because I have to point in a mirrored way, which can catch a few people out, but I know he's that way. So Production Studio is it is just far more easily and much less fiddly, Mike, isn't it? You just press a button, it goes. I'm going to ask him a question, he disappears on me. That's just the way things go. But once you do these sort of things, it is so much easier to have a set of layouts, and then you just choose the one you want, and they're all there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the perfect example was when John was giving me some of my audio cues, or I was being cute and coming back with certain scenes as he was talking about them. I was quickly going through the different variations that John already has pretty set up as host of the Zoom Webinar Plus, and just making sure that everybody, I know John and I keep calling it Zoom Webinar, but it's actually Zoom Webinar Plus that has Production Studio. So I keep flipping through the different scenes, and as you keep seeing, every once in a while, depending on where John is talking, I will go from different scene to different scene. And of course, this is a different scene to add me onto the floor as well, or just for you guys to see on YouTube and LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when it comes to the actual scene that I happen to be using right now, Production Studio, it's actually a 3-up scene that John actually made for me. But again, I was utilizing it for just John by himself. And also when John said, "Oh, Mike, I've got a question for you," then I was able to add myself quickly and then came on, and now I'm there. So yes. Is it a lot quicker than spotlighting, unspotlighting? in the meeting world, yes, in my view.
Yeah, I agree with you. If you've got a panel discussion that's going to be 4 people and you've got, I don't know, the MC and the main presenter on the screen, and then you need to switch to a panel discussion. In meetings, you're going to be doing unspotlight, spotlight, 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 and people are going to be popping up one at a time. It looks very amateur, and it's so panicky to create as well. Whereas if you're in production studio, you just choose the scene where all those people are already set out in the order you want, Mike, don't you? And they just appear.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
as simple as that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, too, you know, as I'm talking to everyone now, I'm now full screen, but that was when John was in full screen, this is the same scene. And I just did a quick little change where I chose myself instead of choosing John. And that's where now, and it gives John a bit of a break so he can actually take a drink too. And he's back.
I should
Just like that too.
Should have muted my microphone at the same time in case I get gargling noises. But yes, it is so much easier. And as the numbers get bigger and you have more control, then I think it's something you should really, really look at. And
yes,
if you think of the people who are coming on these events, Mike, you know, if you're going to have your CEO or another senior management team member, and then you're going to have all the other team members for products and you know, divisions or whatever part of it. If you think about the cost of all your employees to be at that meeting or whatever you're going to call it, or webinar, and the importance of it as an office hours thing for your company, I respectfully suggest that if you bought a license for Zoom Webinars Plus to run that, that's not really an expense of any great degree compared to the number of staff and the value you'll get if you get an interactive audience. I would have thought it was almost, don't tell Zoom I said this because they want to put the prices up, but I would say it's, you know, it's pretty much like a giveaway, isn't it? Really, it's the, you know, the cost of these products is ridiculously small when you think of the value of the meetings that they represent.
and the amount of gear that it would take to do what we are doing, even just for the show right now. Yes, this is easily
course.
thousands of dollars.
Of course. You make a really good point there. And I'm sorry, because I never even thought of it to put in my notes. If you have a well-managed piece of control, which is what Production Studio in a webinar format for Zoom gives you, you don't need, although the CEOs love it, I know, but you don't need a load of expensive studios with lots of expensive studio equipment. We're running our shows here, and we've got the Atlantic Ocean between the two of us. We're 5 hours apart in time zone, but we can run these events, well, not quite easily, but we can run these events in a very simple way, even when we have lots of guests, because we've got a technology which allows us to just put all these little boxes together and allows us to run these events with, as you say, Mike, if I did this in a physical way, I would need multiple cameras, I need lights, I need a studio, I would need all the panelists to have to turn up to that physical place so that they could all join together. They wouldn't be able to whisper because they'd all be effectively on stage all the time. Yeah, to do it in a studio format will be horrendously more expensive, more complicated, more difficult to organize. And yet here we are, Zoom gives us a virtual working version of that. And all we need is a reasonable camera and a reasonable light for each person. And it's done.
And it's done. Yeah. And it's done. And again, too, the amount of money, I know that, you know, if I was doing such things where I wanted an all employee meeting and everybody to be flown from across Canada to our offices here in Toronto, Canada, I'm paying thousands of dollars just to bring everybody in for a potential hour, maybe 2 tops, that I'm doing a town hall meeting.
Yeah.
I'm
And that would
saving
immediately-
how much money?
Well,
Lots.
yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say the opposite. With all that expense and complication, I would probably be put off doing my town hall meetings, and I'd probably make them once a quarter because I wouldn't want to
Right.
go to all that faffing around and cost to organize it all and run it all on a regular basis. Yet the most successful town halls that I see done are being done, I'm just thinking now, mostly monthly, but I know there's quite a few Zoom type events which are happening every 2 weeks, or some of them, they're actually running it every week. But if they can, at a smaller scale, fix the problem of, I don't know, half a dozen people, and at smaller scale, I've seen that happen a lot, then that 1 hour a week, as I said, it's gold, really. You know, I'm always persuading myself I need to have an office hours for myself. In fact, I think I will. I think I probably will. Mike's now thinking, what, not the show? But I've persuaded myself. If I can't persuade you, I've persuaded myself. So at least I've got some value out of this meeting. I think Juju's got some
He
value
does.
comments. So
Yes.
I think there's no better way to get feedback from your customers at a sort of arm's length type process, because it's much less intimidating than doing it one-on-one for you and for them. So yeah, I don't think anybody out there who's not selling something should not consider doing an office hours. I should say we, because Mike thinks, oh my God, I've got to turn up for that one as well. I have a lot of, as Mike knows, I have a lot of apps that I'm developing in Zoom, and they'll start dripping out over the next few weeks and months. And I'm thinking now that probably the best way to support them is to have an office hours for people to ask questions about them. We did have, and we are bringing back, a office hours for the Zoom forums. So there will be a Zoom forums office hours happening on a Saturday, because Mike said it would be better on a Saturday, and I agreed eventually. So that's restarting, and that will give a chance for me to look at some of the community questions on Zoom and answer them in an office hours format. Well, I persuade myself. I hope I persuaded you then. I hope I persuaded you that there is a really, really good use of Zoom to run office hours. And as we finish this, I will give you a spin-off event that you may want to have. What about a company-wide internal office hours for employees only? I know some of you do it, but exactly the same format of everything we've talked about already today would work perfectly if you want to do a private one into your organization, get feedback in your organization. Just as valuable as a public one, and probably a lot easier to manage again than, you know, people putting comments in chat or emails or a Slack channel or whatever else you use for your internal communications. Why not hold a office hours within your employee? And there's been a comment here about how do you get a gallery view back after you having a spotlight? Well, once you unspotlight people, you can go to gallery mode. And if you are, as host, asking people to follow you, then they will follow you. So you can go to a gallery mode when you're in Zoom meetings by getting everybody to follow the host. And there is a gallery mode scene that Mike can use, but he can't really because there's not enough of us here. But there is a gallery mode scene in Production Studio. So if you want to do a gallery mode of all the people that are on the stage, maybe at the end or for your discussion, that's also possible.
Yes, it is. And that was a good question. And Tony's actually complimenting us too. He says, great info and insights is coming from Tony.
Thanks to you, Tony. Well, that is almost the end of my presentation. Now, I did say and you plan for a short amount because they go on longer. And so is this one. I actually have one more section, which I was going to cover, but actually I'm not going to cover now. I'm actually going to make a show out of it because it is about managing difficult moments. And I don't really want to continue on today because I think we've reached time, and we've also, I think, reached a good ending. So although I've got a whole scenario on difficult moments, I think we're going to put difficult moments into a separate show. So look out for that one. But otherwise, thank you to all the people who put the comments in. Thank you, Mike, for managing all of this and answering the comments. And whether or not you run your Zoom, because it's going to be Zoom, whether or not you run your Zoom on your meeting format, your webinar format, or you go for the full production and run it on Webinars Plus in Production Studio, just please run your office hours. Please make it to a point where you can send out a recording, because that does encourage people to come to the next one, especially if you're addressing questions. And as I said, I think it's a really effective use of time, money, resources, staff to get that connection with your customer base. If you were a physical donut shop selling donuts, you get to see your customers whenever they buy a donut. And therefore you can build a relationship with them. Just because we're hiding behind screens now, please don't make that an excuse to ignore your audience. Because I can tell you, the businesses that succeed are the businesses that take note of their audience. And Zoom itself is a really good example of a business that we all know that does take notice of the comments. You may feel that sometimes Zoom ignores you because you're only one in the millions of users that are in Zoom. But I can promise you that a lot of the times, any problems that you have, somebody's probably got a similar problem. And when we bring them to Zoom's attention, Zoom does make the effort to update their systems to make things work. It doesn't help everybody. And that's the one thing I have to remind you at the end. You can't fix all the problems for all the people all the time, because you will often come into scenarios where there'll be two different groups of people who both want a change which is different to the others, and you can't satisfy everybody. But if you're making the effort and you can tell people when it can't be done why, you'll end up with a really, really keen, supportive user base. Crikey. That's what we want, isn't it? We want people sending us money with joy. Thank you, Mike. I leave it to you to close the meeting in your great style.
Alrighty, and I'm making sure that my next scene is ready after I'm finished, and that's a hint. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us this week on Lord Zoom Live. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to let YouTube know, LinkedIn know, and, of course, that lets Zoom know how much you love our content. Don't forget, we're here every week starting at 2 p.m. Eastern. No, I did it wrong. 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And check your local time zones for the appropriate time in your area. And we'll be here next week again for another edition of Lord Zoom Live. Take care, everybody.
Take care. And if you want to check out the other shows, have a look at go.lordzoom.com.
Perfect. And I'll put that in chat momentarily.
We open wide the virtual stage where ideas spark and wisdom fills the page. From the UK to the land of maple trees, John and Mike bring clarity with ease. We're building meetings, webinars with might, helping you shine, your message taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you Zoom Nas with might, helping you shine your message, taking flight. Whether you're new or you've done this before, Lord Zoom Live will help you do much more. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we grow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show. From big events to breakout rooms with flair, we've got the tools and we're ready to share. Guest experts drop in, bringing gold each time, with insights and tricks to help you climb. Can't make it live, we've got you still. On YouTube and LinkedIn, we're giving that thrill. So tune in later or catch us next round. Either way, your success is where we're bound. Thank you for joining us, we're glad you're here. Together we grow, it's loud and clear. On Zoom we connect, we learn, we glow. Welcome my friend, enjoy the show. And make it live, we've got you still. On YouTube and LinkedIn, we're giving that thrill. So tune in later or catch us next round. Either way, your success is where we're bound. Now take the spotlight, the stage is yours. Bring your message through virtual doors. Each week we gather, and now you know you're not alone, so let it flow. Thank you for joining us, now go and shine. Share what you've learned, your voice, your time. With Lord Zoom Live, your power will grow. It's time to build your own show.